invite Dr. Sundar Ramaswamy, Vice Chancellor, Kriya University, to tell us more as to how do you expect the children of today who are in schools and who are aspiring to come to you in the universities to prepare themselves, or how do you expect the schools to prepare their children better so that they come to you with a certain set of skills and competencies which you can polish further?
Thank you, Jyoti, and good morning to all of you. And it was really nice to hear all the comments from the speakers, and it's quite a panel, Pranav, you have managed to arrange. We are a relatively young university, a few years old, in the undergraduate program for School of Interwoven Arts and Sciences. But the sponsoring body of IFMR has a 20-year-old business school that I oversee and 5 research centers spread out all over India, which are in the space of public development and poverty alleviation and digital financial inclusion. So they're quite well known. But to take your question head on, because this is the reason Kriya was even set up. And the etymology of Kriya was to focus on creativity in action. And when you write Kriya with a hard K in Sanskrit or Devanagari, it also means action. And if you see the logo behind me, the idea was to push what we call interwoven learning. Because we felt, as Dr. Rao and Dr. Pant have said, problems are rarely disciplinary and requires, of course, people to be specialized in some knowledge of a discipline. But the openness to other areas really prepare the student that much better to solving the world's problems, right? So I'll just take a few minutes and just provide a context. Let's say the year we are all living through. It started out and it still is a public health crisis. And then very quickly, it got layered with an economic crisis, which we are still navigating. And as we come out of this, economists, and I'm a professional economist, we are talking whether it's going to be not a U-shape or a V-shape, but a K-shaped recession, which means some people who have the skills will take off and others will get even further left behind. And then, of course, what started out in the US as Black Lives Matter, and then in Europe as anti-colonialism, in our own country, we saw the problems which just exploded on the scenes with the migrants. And it exposed the underbelly of the economic reforms of the last 20 years, which is what is the impact on social justice. The gap between the haves and the have-nots within the country has kept kept expanding, which means any of us are dealing with these 3 crises simultaneously. And then you can add the 4th one, which is climate change, right? Whether it's excessive rainfall or fires across the world or what have you. So I think this world is what the current students are going to be faced with and have been faced with for quite some time. But this is the post-COVID world. And the backdrop of the 4th industrial revolution that Dr. Pant started with, that is not going to change. That is, in fact, once the lockdown gets released across globally and travel picks up and technology change continues to unfold at a rapid pace, the students, as all of you have said, are not just being prepared for what exam to take, what degree to get, but it's really how do you get students to learn how to learn, right? This is what I've always felt has been lacking. We are very good at teaching what to learn, but not as good as learning to learn and asking questions. So, Jyoti, to your point, if I were to go back and start, it is, as a product of CBSE school system in Delhi and undergraduate and postgraduate at Delhi University, in many ways, I had a very good background and upbringing, but in some ways, there's a disconnect between the preparation then and what the world desires. And some of that needs to go back to 8th standard, right? Is when we start siloing them into science track and commerce track and arts track and all of that. And as if students cannot have multiple interests, as if somehow the idea that a computer scientist cannot also have a side interest in creative writing. Now, of course, many institutions are introducing multiple disciplines and choice-based electives and all of this, but I'm talking of the generic system has not changed. And so in some ways, the NEP has been a shot in the arm if it actually gets implemented and followed through, because we are still, I think so many sectors of the economy have come up to 2021. I think education broadly is still not caught up. And so I think it starts with, while all of us sitting here are focused on higher education, I think unfortunately we have to learn to work with schools because that's where the students really are, I think, where they can actually learn some habits. For instance, students are incredibly curious and incredibly creative in 6th and 7th standard and 8th standard. And then the pressures that we put on them as parents, as society, and you can only be an engineer or a doctor. And then, this idea of being an entrepreneur, where is your next job going to come from? And I think so that's a whole scale change that will happen. And I'm confident it'll happen. And it's already happening. As Dr. Rao said, there are institutions like IIT Delhi that are already doing it. At Kriya, we set it up very purposefully to break down these walls. I don't have departments. So we have many institutions are doing things creatively, but these cannot just be isolated points of light. I think India is so vast. The average university has to change, not the ones represented on this panel. I'm just talking about any average university so that any average student can aspire to become the next Bill Gates. And it's not only the very chosen people who can go through a particular training, right? And so that is a tall order, but we'll get there, right? At least now we are starting to think. So I really think, and so in the last few minutes, I want to sort of end with actually a quotation that I have actually thought a lot about, and it was said in 1920 by T.S. Eliot, the American British poet. And I actually find that 100 years later, it may actually even be more relevant today. And it goes something as follows. Where is the wisdom that is lost in all the knowledge? Where is the knowledge that's lost in all the information? To which I, as an economist, add, where is the information that is lost in all the data? So we are awash with data. Everybody wants to learn data analytics because data has become a language. It's like learning Hindi or Mandarin. I might as well learn data as a language, and that's good. But this idea of sorting out what is data, what is information, what is knowledge, to ultimately what is wisdom, right? So the purpose of education, I think, as an economist, I still feel it's very important to be practical and pragmatic. And yes, you need to worry about careers and jobs and so on. But we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that the purpose of education is also about how to live a life. It is not just earning a living. So Eliot's point is, and as somebody said earlier, information is now available at the touch of a key. Anybody who's got a smartphone on the internet, everything is available. So gone are the days when teachers thought my brain was an empty vessel into which they poured information on which we tested. So how do we test kids? How do we assess kids? So it's not just about regurgitation of information. So because information is now available at the touch of a key. So then if you think about that quotation, it is really how do we transmit knowledge? And so what is the difference between knowledge and information? And that is still an interesting discussion because professors and teachers still, I would argue, think that transmitting information is their job rather than getting students to sort out what is good information, what is bad information, how do you provide filters, how do you ask questions, how do you think critically, how do you collaborate with others to become more knowledgeable, right? I think that the transition from information to knowledge, which is happening, is becoming even more pressing in 2021. And lastly, if the purpose of schools and colleges up to say masters is to prepare you for life, because you're not just going to have 5 or 7 jobs, but 5 or 7 careers, but also to be a good citizen, to be a good human, that is the transition to wisdom. And I think we all, whether we are biologists or chemists or physicists or industrial engineers, I think we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that whatever you call that set of curricula that gets you from knowledge to wisdom is not just outsourced to parents and they'll pick it up somewhere else. I think universities have to think about how do I make the student, because they are with us for a long period of time when they're doing their bachelor's or master's, how do we prepare them to be good voters, to be good citizens, to be good humans, to care when the migrant crisis exploded? Even if I was a physicist, how do I care about the migrants problem that I'm faced with, right? So my point is, yes, we all colleges and are judged by placement and how many PhDs we produce and so on. But let us not lose sight of the fact that educational institutions should not, has a moral obligation to also produce good humans. And schools start with that, but kids are still evolving at 2021. And so they are with us from 17 to 21. I think we have an obligation to continue with that and prepare them, which actually prepares them to be really good employees, I would argue, for a long period to come. So let me stop here and turn it over to the others.
That's wonderful. And what you say, that learning to learn and the children being curious in the school, and construction of knowledge, not just by the parents or by the schools or by the universities. I think it's important that the children also construct their own knowledge, because they come with some background knowledge as well. And it's not just learning, it's also creating life for themselves, which is very, very important. Thank you so much.